Okay, welcome back. Here we are at the Allegheny River, and as I mentioned in my last video, working on trying to finish the scenery here. So we'll start with the bridge. As I mentioned, this is not the Mosgrove bridge. This is actually closer to a bridge outside of Curwensville. It's a curved bridge with beams, although it has metal piers. But what I've done, this was a piece of spline that I had painted black, and I just attached the track to it. What I should have done was made a template by doing a rubbing of the tops of the rails, and then actually constructed, box beams, set them on the piers, and then slid that in between the track and sawed the spline out. But this was early on when I built this, and I was in a rush to run trains because I hadn't run trains for about 30 years. So in retrospect, I'd do it differently. So what I ended up doing is, you can see here, you can just see the spline on the last beam. What I did is basically just made a balsa wood veneer. I laminated two pieces of balsa wood together, glued them, and then clamped them to the spline so they would accept the arc. And then I came in with finer pieces to do the small webs all along the beams, and then painted them and weathered them. So I think for now it'll be a good stand-in. Maybe the permanent bridge, I'm not really sure, but for now that's how I'm going to approach it. I definitely will be making more trees because that's really going to be critical to tying it into the backdrop. But I've come in here with static grass, coconut coir, shrubs and underbrush that I've shown before. I've got some foliage, so we're still a long way to go here. But I did paint and ballast the track underneath. I think that was Penn Central, although I'm not sure whose railroad that was. But it just stops here at the fascia, stops at the backdrop, so it's just to replicate that geography, but doesn't actually operate. What else? As an afterthought, I actually came in and put a pipe in with an outfall and some riprap apron, and even built a little styrene inlet box and soldered together. Probably won't be able to see it real well, but even soldered some real fine phosphor bronze wire to make a grate and painted that. It's kind of deep in the scenery, so it's unlikely anybody's even going to see it, but just thought it would add some additional detail and interest. And then over on this side, there was a section of the foam that was just really, really steep. So what I did is I carved it up using a knife. For now, I just put some flat latex paint in to make sure there's no white showing through. I'll come back and then paint the face of it rock colors, very similar to how I did that rock cut, or the one that is really hard to see in here. But I'll follow a similar technique to be able to do that. Just seemed like it was too steep to vegetate, and it's relatively steep to begin with, coming out from the side, and it's almost vertical. So that might just create a little bit of additional interest as well too. So I'm going to work through this, and I'll probably take some video and hopefully do some progress shots along the way. I also noticed I think I need to show or paint the brown of the shoreline to wrap around the corner onto the backdrop. You can see I tried to make the colors of the water wrap around, but I think I need to extend that brown shoreline a little bit just to hopefully make it transition a little bit better. And then I need to come up here, and I'm just going to do some real short static grass, because this will actually be some area of reasonably maintained lawn next to PPC lubricants, similar to what I've done, at least not the high meadow area, but to the lower grass here. So it'll look a little bit like that. So that's what we have for now, and more to follow. Just quickly wanted to give a little progress, and I'll probably do a few of these brief progress videos and maybe tie them all together. So I did come in and paint a little bit of brown around the shoreline. I'll have to darken it up with a couple more tones of brown, but I think that maybe helps a little bit. Not sure. I did it there as well. And I did paint the rock faces. The earth tone, you can see how the black creates a little bit of shadow in there. It's probably a little bit too much right now. That too will get a couple different layers of browns, and a lot of that's going to get covered with vines and so forth. But like I said, I just thought it was too steep to try and just vegetate, and also just be one area. There's no other areas of rock face in this river channel, so I thought that would be a unique aspect and break up the monotony a little bit. And I've left out this one bridge beam on purpose, and what I've done here is here's the ready to go piece that I need to put some paint on. And like I said, it's just a couple pieces laminated together with the finer detail, just all wood glued together and then just sanded lightly with 400 grit sandpaper, and then that will ultimately sit upright like that. So I'll have to come up with some bridge bearings under each beam. They're somewhat distant from the fascia, and they're pretty small, so I think if I get something that closely represents a bridge bearing or a foot for each beam, I think that'll be sufficient, particularly since I mentioned this is really just not the bridge I intended to build, but for the sake of getting the scenery done in this area, this seemed like a relatively short path to get there. So alright, so need to continue working on that rock face, need to continue adding the lower vegetation so that I can drop the trees in on top of that once I make those. Still haven't made them yet, I'm putting that off. And as much as I don't want to pick this building up and move it, it's not attached, but it's just for whatever reason that's a deterrent to getting this other area done with static grass. Then I've got these slopes. There's a chance I might come in here and maybe just do another retaining wall there. That's a really steep slope, although I don't know, we'll see. I haven't decided yet how I want to deal with that, but more vegetation needs to go in there as well. So we'll put the camera down and get back to work. Okay, made a little more progress. So I got the final bridge beam installed, so that's glued in. All I need to do now is add I have to figure out, probably make some bridge bearings, but either make them or buy them, but I'll probably put some together. I need a bunch of them. Added a little bit more vegetation along the backdrop, more vegetation underneath the bridge, and first coat of tan paint over the rocks, put some grass on the bottom, a little bit of debris that fell down, not sure if that shows up or not. And on the other side, worked in some more vegetation all the way in the back. Here, since it was very steep again, I came in and scored the foam and joint compound, and this shows the 2 layers of black paint and then tan paint to reflect a rock formation. I just thought it might be monotonous to have vines the whole way along this road, so given how steep it was, I kind of let the topography tell me what to do, and the steepness of it seemed to lend itself to a rock face. And also did the lawn area next to PPC lubricants. So I tried to make it look like it might be a maintained lawn, but not meticulously maintained, and created what I hope looks like a mow line here. And I'll put some larger bits of Scenic Express super trees, and maybe even some trees a little deeper into the scenery here. So we're making a little bit of progress, starting to come together and look like a finished scene, but still a lot more detail. And again, until you start adding the trees, that'll really put the finishing touch on it and add that just full amount of green to offset some of the other colors. So more to follow, but that's where we are so far. Okay, I think we are actually almost ready for trees, and they are in progress but not quite ready. They probably won't be ready till tomorrow morning to be able to start planting. So we have the bridge done. I have what I think is all the final vegetation on the right hand bank done, the rock formation with some vines hanging over it. Actually came in with some grout and some small stones just to kind of create some washout areas on the steeper spots in the bank that I didn't turn into rock cuts. And then, this is the coconut coir with the scale leaves attached to it. This is coconut coir with fine turf, different color fine turf back here on the coconut coir. So just kind of alternated some of the plants to make it look like there's different types growing through there. This is actually a grass mat along the bottom with some stones and grout in between periodically. This vine here is made up with polyfiber stretched out and then covered with fine turf. I think that's a green blend. I think this is weeds in terms of colors. These vines are actually foliage. I think it's medium green foliage, I'm not sure. Then I've got I think a hecky mat up here to kind of transition as well. This is more of the coconut coir. I think it's green grass colored. And then again in the back, that's the scale leaves on the coconut coir, part of the hecky mats here. These are some coconut coir shrubs I did before. They're a little harder to make to get the upright branching pattern. I'm not sure if I'll keep repeating that or if I'll just buy some fabricated shrubs for, you know, occasional use. Then on the other side, coming up the bank, same blend of materials. So again, we have the static grass that I had done previously. This is polyfiber vines. These are foliage vines, more foliage. I think that's the hecky mat. This is just a little piece of super tree. Here's the rock cut area. Again, some of the coconut coir with weeds, the weed colored fine turf. And this was some longer static grass in this area with some foliage stretched over top of it. Again, same blend of materials for the most part. Tried to make an area of kind of a washout area, so there's some small amounts of static grass I tried to do in a linear pattern just by using straight Mod Podge. And you can dab it where you want the grass to be, and then it seems to create a decent effect. There's the inlet back there, outfall pipe, and a little spot in here I didn't carve, but I tried to paint a little bit of a rock formation, just because I probably ended the retaining wall a little sooner than I should have. So that, pretty darn close to being wrapped up. So I've got more trees I need in here. You can see where the leaf litter is, so obviously that'll all be mostly forested. I want to make sure I keep access to that ground throw, so I probably won't put too many large trees here. Maybe some trees in here on either side of the trestle or the bridge, and definitely some trees, you know, back in this area and back here, and maybe some shrubs along the top of this ridge. Haven't quite decided yet. But so hopefully one more phase, and then the scenery will be pretty well along here at the Mosgrove Bridge that's not the Mosgrove Bridge. Well, it always surprises me how long it takes to make trees, about 2.5 days. I made about 20, and it took me about 45 minutes to put them in. So here is the finished product, or at least mostly finished product. I may come back in and do a little bit more, maybe some shrubs in here. Again, I don't want to put any trees so that people reaching for the ground throw don't risk snapping the trees off. Added a couple more trees up here on the top of this hillside. Added some along the backdrop behind the bridge. Several along this really steep bank here. A couple in the back underneath to try and screen the transition to the backdrop. And a few along the other bank. and some in the back as well. Didn't have any left to do along the top of this bank in the back. Again, I'm not sure if I will or not. And in between the road and the tracks in this area just isn't wide enough, I don't think, to put a tree, at least a large tree. We can maybe put some small shrubs or something in there. So might tinker around with it a little bit more, but that is about it for now.